provide a description of him. Police focused on trying to find the man seen talking with Tricia and the blue car. One particularly observant neighbour noted that the licence plate started with the letters QR, and patrol cars were instructed to keep an eye out for the vehicle. Other witnesses believed they saw Tricia and the unidentified male at the corner of Lee information about her disappearance. Police were certain they had the person responsible for abducting Tricia. 3 days after the disappearance, 3 separate witnesses picked Pontarelli out of a lineup, convinced he was the man they had seen with Tricia. Despite the positive identification, Pontarelli was never charged in Tricia's case. He was arrested for several different crimes, including corruption of a minor and child pornography, but these charges were dropped about 6 months later. The children involved refused to testify against him, and it was commonly believed that Pontarelli had brought their silence as their families suddenly had access to large amounts of cash. Marvin Pontarelli's name would continue to be mentioned in reference to Tricia's disappearance. In 1984, a witness told police that Pontarelli had been overheard telling people he had abducted Tricia so he could photograph her having sex with a man named Larry Fassler. Pontarelli owed Fassler a substantial amount of money, and he planned to use the photographs to blackmail him so he wouldn't have to pay. A Chicago police report notes that Fassler's address book was searched, and they found Tricia's name and address entered in the book. Right underneath this entry, he had written Marvin Pontarelli's name. In 1985, Pontarelli was arrested in Arizona on unrelated charges, and Chicago police took the opportunity to interview him while he was in custody. He gave conflicting answers, at one point saying that Larry Fassler had killed Tricia, at other times tearfully admitting he had done it and buried her